This is my presentation. My name is Braxton Brown, and I'm a 20-year-old college student from Forest Lake, Minnesota. Today I'll be talking about generalized anxiety disorder. Now, this topic is very near and dear to my heart because I am a sufferer of generalized anxiety disorder, and I'm very happy to say that I am recovering after a multiple-year stretch of depression, anxiety, panic attacks, agoraphobia, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Anxiety is a growing affliction with most college students. If you are a loved one that is suffering from this terrible illness, I would like to preface this by saying I'm sorry you feel this way. My inbox is always open, and help is out there. You can get through this, and I hope my presentation today can be of some assistance. So what exactly is anxiety? Now, anxiety, according to an article by Kimberly Holland and peer-reviewed by psychological and physical doctor Timothy J. Legg, anxiety is your body's natural response to stress. It's a feel of fear or apprehension about what's to come. First day of school, going to a job interview, or giving a speech cause most people to feel fearful and nervous. Now, this sort of anxiety is actually a good thing. A little bit of anxiety or nervousness actually helps us perform better. I would be hard-pressed to find a person who has not suffered from anxiety in their life. It's very natural. The anxiety we'll be talking about today is generalized anxiety disorder, which is a clinically diagnosed mental illness. This also is quite common. According to the Mayo Clinic, located right here in Rochester, Minnesota, there are more than 3 million reported U.S. cases a year. I emphasize reported because many people don't feel comfortable enough disclosing this information to a doctor or family member. This means that in the most conservative estimates, 1 in every 10 people in the United States suffer from generalized anxiety disorder. Directly from WebMD.com, generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, as some people like to call it, is characterized by excessive, exaggerated anxiety and worry about everyday life events with no obvious reason for worry. People with symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder tend to always expect disaster and can't stop worrying about health, money, family, work, or school, among other things. As much as I don't want to spend too long talking about the symptoms due to such restricted time, I think it's important to talk about the visible and non-visible signs that you or someone else may be struggling. This image ties it up very nicely. There are 3 types of symptoms, and sufferers don't often experience all of them. It can be any combination of the symptoms listed. I can tell you that for me, physical symptoms included shortness of breath, dizziness, stomach pains, and nausea. Psychological symptoms included irritability, excessive fatigue, a racing mind, and behaviorally, I would act quite erratically and would avoid social situations. Now, everybody is different, but we can see patterns and behaviors among sufferers of generalized anxiety disorder. Now, even better yet, let's talk about some of the ways people can handle this. The biggest and most common one being drugs and alcohol. One study by Dr. Sudie E. Back and Kathleen T. Brady of the U.S. National Library of Medicine, U.S. National Library of Medicine, and the National Institute of Health found that 20% of people with anxiety disorders also had a substance abuse disorder. This is not a good coping mechanism because oftentimes drug and alcohol just make things worse. We form dependencies that will make the process to recovery much, much harder. That first sip of booze or that first shot of heroin may have you feeling better than you ever have, even before you had the illness, but you'll come to find that you'll feel much worse than you did before, physically and mentally. Luckily for us, there are better coping mechanisms. I'll recommend 3 today, and any of these combinations may or may not work for any individual person. Yes, prescription drugs, the good kind. Some of these include Prozac and Wellbutrin. These can help us with chemical imbalances in the body and oftentimes help to fix any problem. I like to put a little asterisk on this one because many times it takes quite a while for you to find the right drug combination, and it may take a very long time for you to start feeling the effects. In fact, you might actually feel worse for a few weeks while your body is getting used to the medication. These never worked for me in particular, but I've heard of many success stories of people who took a miracle medication and became a completely different person for the better. Now, here's my personal favorite, therapy. I must admit I didn't believe in this much when I started, but once you break your heart outer shell, this can be very helpful. There are trained psychological doctors, after all, who see hundreds of cases like yours every year. I know there tends to be a negative stigma when it comes to this, and you may feel crazy, but at least for me, at that point, I had nothing to lose but my life, and I was conscious enough to know that I wanted to stick around. And once again, I'll emphasize that I was very surprised at the effectiveness of talking to a psychiatrist. As a man, it can be hard to express your feelings and emotions, but if nothing else has been working, I figure why not try it. Now, this one seems to be becoming more and more effective as time goes on. Meditation and figuring out who you really are can often help with many of these problems. This could be performing yoga, traveling, listening to music, or writing. And I've learned over my battle that although it may be tough to find a coping mechanism, everyone has different ways they can calm themselves down, and it's important to stick to it. Now, here are some numbers I'd like to mention. Depression and anxiety often go hand in hand, so if you are feeling suicidal, once again, please talk to me. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, call on these numbers. You're better off here than dead. Forgive me for my bluntness, but you can get better, and there are people out there that love you and are willing to help. That pretty much concludes my presentation. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions about any of the content in the presentation or even my personal experiences, comment down below. I will absolutely respond to every single one of you. This has been a great project, and I look forward to seeing everybody else's. Good luck, everybody.